Do you still remember what it felt like to order fast food without even looking at the price? Back then, just a few bucks in your pocket could get you a hot, quick meal that actually filled you up. But now standing at the counter, many people hesitate. Not because there are too many choices, but because there is not enough money. A fast food meal used to be a symbol of convenience and affordability. Now it has become a monthly budget burden. In less than 2 years, combo prices in many states have jumped nearly 30%. And it is not just the price going up. Portions are smaller, quality has dropped, and even the taste seems different. Does it feel like everything is changing too fast? There is something unsettling when even the most familiar brands no longer feel stable. Something is quietly pushing the fast food industry into a crisis that few people can fully see. In this video, we will take a closer look at 6 major names to understand why it has come to this point, and why it could get even worse. Number 1. Subway. Have you noticed something just feels off lately when you walk into a Subway? The veggies look like they have been drained of life. Cucumbers sliced so thin they are practically see-through. Sometimes you get only a single slice of cheese, and what ends up in your hands looks nothing like the poster on the wall. This is not about lazy employees. It is not about one bad store. This is a system-wide problem happening everywhere. And you know the ironic part? Everything started to change right after the latest round of import tariffs kicked in on key ingredients. Subway has relied on for years. According to The Sun, a 25% tax on vegetables imported from Mexico, Canada, and Guatemala has sent Subway's ingredient costs through the roof. Items that used to be cheap, like tomatoes, bell peppers, and lettuce, are now expensive luxuries the chain has been forced to cut back on in every sandwich. This has not only made their sandwiches pricier, but it has also stripped away their soul. Subway built its brand on being fresh, green, and healthy. But now ask yourself, is it still healthy when 80% of your sandwich is just bread and processed deli meat? So why is Subway staying quiet? It is not because they do not know. It is because they are struggling to cope. Financial data released in early Q3 2025 shows Subway's US foot traffic has dropped more than 12% compared to the same time last year. That is their steepest decline since the pandemic. And remember, Subway once held the title of America's largest fast food chain by store count. Now, many locations are quietly shutting down, no announcements, no warnings, disappearing as if they never existed. And this is not just about price. It is about trust being broken. Subway used to be the go-to choice for millions of middle-class Americans, people who were not wealthy but still wanted to eat something healthy. Now, for $12, you get a tiny sandwich, sparse veggies, a paper-thin slice of cheese, and bland sauce. Do you feel like you are being played? Like you have been misled by the very brand you once trusted? This is not just a temporary dip in quality. This is the direct result of short-sighted economic policies where the end victim is always the consumer. When the government taxes the food supply, they do not tell you that your lunch will never be the same, but you will taste it in the very first bite. And if Subway, once seen as the affordable, clean-eating option for everyday people, cannot keep that promise, then what brand can own? Up next, we move to the second name. On the list, a chain that seemed strong, but is now taking heavy hits from both consumer sentiment and a double tax squeeze. Chipotle. Number 2. Chipotle. In August 2025, several market reports showed that more Americans are choosing to eat at home than at any point since the pandemic. But here's the thing. It is not because of health concerns, it is because of a growing sense of disconnection from the brands they once trusted. And on that list is a name almost no one expected to see in trouble: Chipotle. Once celebrated as the poster child of a new kind of fast food that was healthy, transparent, and all natural, Chipotle has now become a prime example of how a brand can lose its identity in the middle of a tariff storm and a wave of belt tightening across the country. According to the Financial Times, Chipotle's US sales in the second quarter of 2025 dipped slightly but consistently across every age group, most notably among adults over 45. They are not trash-talking Chipotle. They are just quietly walking away. A single burrito can now cost up to $15, but the real problem is not just the price. It is that unsettling feeling. It does not feel real anymore. The Financial Times also reports that Chipotle has been taking hits from both sides, ingredient costs climbing because of new tariffs and customers pulling back because they are watching every dollar. To understand how it got here, you need to look at Chipotle's supply chain. Most of the black beans, rice peppers, and beef Chipotle uses come from partners in Mexico, South America, and Canada. Today, each of those products is carrying at least a 10% import tax, not to mention rising transportation costs. Beef prices are up, cooking oil prices are up, even the paper wrapping is getting hit with extra fees. So what does Chipotle do? They do not want to hike prices again and risk scaring off more customers. But they also cannot swallow all those costs. The result is smaller portions, fewer ingredients, but no announcement about the change. Customers just feel like something is missing, even if they cannot quite put their finger on it. Internal numbers show a clear drop in the average number of visits per customer during Q2 2025. According to the New York Post, many middle-aged customers are now eating at home or switching to cheaper alternatives because they no longer feel Chipotle is worth it. And here's the scary part: they do not hate Chipotle. They are not angry. They are just quietly slipping away. That kind of silent exit is far more dangerous. It makes no noise, sparks no protests, yet it slowly chokes revenue. Imagine a chain once loved for being real and clean, now leaving people unsure of the most basic thing: is the food they are putting in their body still real? Chipotle is no longer natural, no longer rustic. And the most unsettling part is that even customers cannot pinpoint exactly when the change began. Tariffs. Maybe. Rising costs. Maybe. But that empty feeling, that part is real. And if Chipotle, once the symbol of trust in real food in an artificial world, is losing its bond with customers, then which brand can hold the line? Next, we're going to talk about Wendy's, a chain that once swore it would never use frozen beef, until the Times forced it to break that promise. Number 3. Wendy's. There's one thing every marketer knows by heart: the stronger the slogan, the higher the expectations. And Wendy's, with its famous never frozen promise, set a standard so high that it has been carrying that weight for years. But in 2025, no one can say for sure how much longer they can keep that promise. Starting late 2024, beef supply chains from Canada and parts of Central America took a hit from new tariffs. Import duties jumped to between 25 and 32%, especially for fresh beef, industrial cooking oil, and packaging materials. Wendy's is one of the chains that relies heavily on never frozen beef sourced from partners outside the US. When the tariff wave hit, they had to make a choice: raise prices or change ingredients. The thing is, Wendy's never made a formal announcement. No press release, no public transition campaign. But sharp-eyed customers could taste the difference. Not on posters, but on their tongues. Food forums started buzzing back in March. Wendy's burgers felt less juicy, harder to chew, and missing that natural sweetness of fresh beef. Some older customers even compared them to the frozen burgers they once had in industrial cafeterias. And here's the real problem: customers didn't feel insulted. They felt underestimated. When a brand makes a bold promise and quietly backs away what's left, isn't just disappointment, it's doubt. Not just about the burger, but about every promise from every other loud-talking brand. According to internal sales reports, repeat visits to Wendy's in northern border regions are down more than 18% compared to the same time last year. Part of it is the higher prices, but another part is that Wendy's is losing its edge. In the eyes of many, it's becoming a cheaper McDonald's that's even less consistent. And let's not forget, Older customers once saw Wendy's as the quiet difference in a sea of industrial fast food, a place that kept its own character without copying anyone. Now, that unique spark is hard to name anymore. Worse yet, recent attempts to keep customers, like launching a $3 combo or slashing burger prices, have only fueled suspicion about food quality. Because when prices drop too fast in the middle of inflation and soaring import tariffs, older customers are bound to ask, so what exactly am I eating? Wendy's is slowly sinking into what Americans call brand fatigue, the exhaustion that comes when expectations are no longer met. And once trust starts to shake, the never-frozen slogan loses all its weight. It's just 4 words on a sign. Nothing more. Number 4. Burger King. It's hard to believe, but since the start of 2025, hundreds of Burger King locations across the United States and Canada have quietly vanished from the map, especially in small towns and working-class neighborhoods. No media scandal, no PR crisis. What's been eating away at Burger King comes from things most people don't see: import tariffs, packaging costs, and skyrocketing operating expenses. Unlike McDonald's or Wendy's, which have stronger leverage with domestic suppliers, Burger King has long relied heavily on imported ingredients, especially frozen beef, vegetable oil, and paper wrappers sourced from Southeast Asia. When import tariffs from Indonesia, Malaysia, and even Mexico climbed above 30% in 2025, Burger King was cornered. Raise prices and customers leave. Keep prices the same and they bleed money. Faced with 2 bad choices, they opted for a third, quietly walking away. According to analysis from Franchise Wire, franchise owners in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan voluntarily returned their leases and pulled out, unable to balance the books after the new wave of tariffs. In Canada alone, as many as 41 Burger King branches shut down within just 6 months, an unprecedented number. The worrying part isn't just that a major brand is dying, it's the way it's fading out silent, detached, without a single word of explanation. Middle-aged customers who grew up on Whoppers are now left staring at an empty, dust-covered lot. No apology, no goodbye. And what does that silence leave behind? Not disappointment. Anger. Because everyone knows Burger King didn't collapse from a lack of customers. It was pushed out of the game by policies that seemed irrelevant to ordinary people. Tariffs on palm oil paper packaging and imported beef might sound like a corporate problem. In reality, they took away the most familiar dining spots for working people. The name Burger King no longer rings as a symbol of royalty. It's now just an echo of a once comfortable past, leaving only emptiness and a thin layer of dust behind glass doors sealed shut. Number 5. Tim Hortons. A cup of coffee, a donut, a small corner to warm up in the middle of a freezing winter. That is how Canadians describe Tim Hortons. In Canada, it is not just a brand. It is part of their identity. But when Tim Hortons crossed into the US market, it brought that identity with it and ran headfirst into reality. Since the start of 2025, the chain has taken 2 big hits at the same time. First, the US slapped import tariffs of more than 35% on coffee beans from Brazil and Colombia, the main sources for Tim Hortons, sending ingredient costs through the roof. Second, a wave of buy local sentiment has been growing stronger across many northern border states, where Tim Hortons has most of its US locations. And to many middle-aged Americans, Tim Hortons still feels like a Canadian brand. That has left Tim Hortons in an awkward spot in the US. On one hand, it is trying to hold on to its identity with hand-roasted coffee and a menu full of Canadian favorites. On the other hand, it is being pushed to Americanize to survive with US-style combos, a new ordering app, and even changes to its ingredients. But this very shift has made Tim Hortons lose its soul in the eyes of Canadians while still failing to connect closely with Americans. Why does this matter? Because middle-aged Americans do not just walk into a shop for coffee. They come looking for something familiar, something safe, something that does not change with the times. And if a brand cannot give them that feeling, no matter how good the coffee is, they will walk away. According to CBC News, Tim Hortons shut down more than 38 U.S. stores in the first half of 2025, mostly in Ohio, Michigan, and Minnesota areas with long-established Canadian communities. The reason was not quality. It was because they could not keep the loyalty of either side. Americans felt it was unfamiliar, while Canadians felt it was no longer Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is stuck in an identity crisis. It started with changes in tariff policy, but it turned into a cultural crack when a brand was forced to change to survive, yet could not change enough to be embraced. In a world where everything is starting to look the same, the last thing that keeps a brand alive is not price, but the feeling that it belongs to you. And that is exactly what Tim Hortons is slowly losing. Up next is a global icon, one that is also feeling the sting of supply chain fatigue and a crisis of trust. McDonald's. The place where it all began and where it could just as easily come to an end. Number 6. McDonald's. Americans grew up with McDonald's, but in 2025, for many people, McDonald's has grown into a place where burgers are no longer cheap, and where even they are not quite sure why they have stopped going. In the first quarter of 2025, McDonald's reported a 3.6% drop in same-store sales in the US, its steepest decline since the COVID lockdowns. CEO Chris Kempczynski said consumers are feeling so weighed down by economic uncertainty that they think twice about every single dollar before walking into McDonald's. Many assumed McDonald's was rock solid because of its massive brand value. But just one punch of higher tariffs and inflation has made the morning Egg McMuffin a luxury. S&P Global says breakfast demand at fast food chains like McDonald's is falling, and that is even scarier than sales numbers, because breakfast is the ritual that starts the day. It does not stop there. The Financial Times reports that low and middle-income customers, McDonald's core audience, are still cutting back, skipping billions of meals out in the first quarter of 2025, compared to the same period in 2024. With incomes stuck on one side, and even budget-friendly chains raising prices on the other, McDonald's has pushed its lowest cost option, the $5 meal deal, across menus to hold on to customers. But the question is whether a cheap meal actually makes people feel better about their spending. Many say it just does not feel the same anymore. And as tariffs ripple through the market, coffee wrappers and packaging are all more expensive. McDonald's used to be the steady round table, always the same, no matter the season. Now it is counting every grain of cost and every dollar in lost profit. No one says it out loud, but everyone notices that chicken wrappers and food bags are not as cheap as they used to be. McDonald's believes it can carry the load better than most competitors thanks to its size and global brand. Even in the middle of a crisis, it opened 200 new stores and invested over $3 billion. But if you are a middle-aged customer worried about rising prices, does that investment make you feel any more secure? There is one small but telling sign. The new Minecraft-themed meal and chicken strips helped McDonald's claw back nearly 4% in sales in the second quarter of 2025. Like a flicker of light, it shows McDonald's has not given up completely. Have you wondered why they rolled out a video game meal instead of sticking strictly to their traditional burgers? McDonald's today feels like an old family dad trying to keep the household together. They are doing things that someone over 50 might look at and think at least they are still trying to keep the home steady. But is that effort enough to keep the emotional bond alive for millions, or will it just become the habit of spending $5 every morning? Number 7. Popeyes. Think back to 2019 when Popeyes launched the chicken sandwich and sent America into a frenzy. Lines wrapped around blocks, stores sold out, and the media exploded. No one expected that just a few years later, the same brand would be struggling to get customers to come back for a second round. The problem is not the flavor, it is the expectation. After its breakout success, Popeyes expanded at breakneck speed, opening hundreds of new stores and aiming to compete head-to-head with McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. But in 2024 and 2025, the momentum stalled. Tariffs hit hard on industrial vegetable oil, and frozen chicken, driving costs up. Bloomberg reports that the price of chicken frying ingredients in southern states where Popeyes relies heavily on cross-border supply chains jumped nearly 28% in just 12 months. Unlike McDonald's, Popeyes is not a diversified menu brand. It lives and dies on a few core items, especially the chicken sandwich. When chicken prices rose, cooking oil rose, and logistics costs climbed with every shipment. Popeyes started shrinking portions, cutting back on sides, and raising combo prices. The result? Customers, especially middle-aged ones, who value consistency and tradition, began feeling that Popeyes is not what it used to be. On forums and Facebook groups, hundreds of comments like smaller chicken, less sauce, and combos with extra charges became common. This was not just personal opinion. It was a sign that affection was being replaced with doubt. And when Popeyes tried expanding into markets with large Canadian communities or middle-class Americans where taste preferences differ, its bold Louisiana flavors were not as easy to win people over. A strong flavor cannot save you if customers feel they are getting less value. Popeyes is still here, but the fever has cooled, and customers are not leaving in anger but with hesitation and caution. They might come back but without the same excitement. Popeyes once pulled off something extraordinary with a chicken sandwich, but in the economy of 2025, extraordinary might take more than hot oil and a crispy coating. From Subway to McDonald's, the names that once stood for convenience, familiarity, and affordable meals for America's working class are being worn down by decisions made at the top. From tariffs to supply chain breakdowns in an economy that is making people feel like they cannot catch their breath. If even fast food, once the safe haven of simple, quick, cheap, and filling, is no longer that refuge for middle-aged consumers, what does the future look like?
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.